Hi, and welcome to another edition of Potluck, your anything and everything talk and entertainment TV show. My name is Laura Hartman, and I am your host. Today, we have a very talented guest joining us who is an award winning documentary filmmaker. She is joining us from Paris, and her films have been seen all around the world. So, without further ado, please welcome to the show the amazing Michelle Medina. Well, welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
So I understand that you went to Smith College, and that is where you started your passion with film?
Yes, actually, this is where I minored. At the time, we didn't have a major, so I minored in film. And I was also introduced to Morocco. So the two interests combined when I was at Smith College, and it hasn't stopped since then.
Okay. So your focus in your films is kind of contradictory or actually probably pretty popular to what we're seeing today in the media in regards to society, gender, and identity. So I can only, I've only seen one of your films from like years ago, but I'm sure that coming from somebody who's also a teacher in journalism and critical thinking, you probably open up eyes to a lot of people in the world. I hope, or I'm sure you hope.
That's really kind of you, but I hope so. But I do. I mean, of course, I do aim to show people a part of the world or a story that they might not have seen before, or we are not really focusing on so much because there's only so many hours in a day, and there's lots of news stories to cover. So I do hope that some of the stories that I cover are new for people. And even for those who are, watching it from their countries, that they also get to see a story that they haven't actually seen. Because my first documentary was made for the Moroccan audience. So it was about a father and a son from Morocco, but I actually made it with the audience being Moroccans. And then after that, it went internationally, but it wasn't the aim because I hadn't actually structured it or explained it sufficiently for an international audience. This time around, I am hoping to make it understandable for a wider global audience. But yes, I mean, generally the topics I look at are things to do with art. And the question is, why do we make art? But the protagonists are young people from Morocco, or fathers and sons from Morocco, or filmmakers from Morocco, or people who work in the service industry in North Africa. I mean, probably the next film, it will expand a bit from that because I've moved from Morocco and I'm now in France. So it'll be perhaps a bit of every little thing. But for now, yes, I try to look at class and society through the lens of an individual story about something we can all relate to. So whether that be the relationship between a father and a son and music, or girls with their families and their little their projects and their creations. Okay. So yes, I mean, I do aim to try to, I guess, educate, but that's but to have fun while doing it. So just to really kind of expose a bit of the world that perhaps hasn't been seen very much before.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about The Secret of Flowers, your film that you're right now, I mean, you spent over 10 years working on, and right now you're in the process of trying to find funds to make the film come to life to the rest of the world. So yeah. What, other than the background that you just talked about, what also inspired you to work with these women in the film?
Yeah, so it's so The Secret Lives of Flowers is a story about teenage girls growing up and coming of age in Morocco. And what inspired the project was it was just at the start of the Arab Spring. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with it, but things were changing rapidly in North Africa, and governments that had been in place for decades were crumbling, and there was a lot of hope for the future and a lot of instability for structures that had been there forever. And, we didn't know what was going to happen in the next few years, if this was going to be a catalyst for change or if this was going to be crushed. And I was looking around thinking I would really like to do something on this, but in Morocco, it wasn't quite the same experience as it was perhaps in Egypt or in Libya or in Tunisia. It was much quieter. And so I thought, I was looking on Facebook, not even thinking about this, and a photograph came up, and it was of a young girl who was doing a self-portrait. And there was just something about it that struck me, something about how, it was subconscious. I didn't put these things together, but she looked kind of like a flower. She was young, she was coming of age. And later on, I understood that the reason why I was very much interested in her story was she kind of represented the flowers of this Arab Spring, of this new era, of this new day. And anything that I found out about her life and whatever I discovered with her was going to tell me a lot about the wider region and the story of what was going on with young people at that time. So it began like that, but it became this 10-year journey of getting to know these particular girls as dynamic individuals who also have questions about where they fit in the world, and insecurities about what's going to happen in the future, and not being fully the correct kind of girl for their country, and definitely not able to completely fit in elsewhere. So feeling like there isn't quite a home for them. So it started with this question, and it led to many others.
And then, but you also interviewed, or you also worked with two other women or two other young girls.
Yes. All in all, they're 4 girls, but two of them are sisters. So it's kind of as if there's 3. But yeah, they're all artists. One is a photographer. The other is a fashion designer who's also getting into film. And then there's another who kind of does a lot of different artwork. She's kind of a mixed media artist. But they all kind of, when I met them, they were, for example, one was 15 years old, and she was, after school, running around the city without her parents' knowledge, taking pictures of just ordinary people in the street. And she was discovering her own culture as an independent person, still as a minor, with a lot of courage and just a lot of curiosity. And she is now working for international news media outlets. And she's had expositions all over the world. But you can just see this evolution of her getting to know herself, her getting to know herself through other people, and her camera being a way to communicate, not being something that was blocking anything between herself and the rest of the world. It was her way of communicating and discovering and answering questions that she had, and just continually allowing her to grow up. So you have different girls, but and very different. They have very different personalities, but the theme between them is similar. Where can they call home? Right. How does their art connect them to other people, and what is their future as girls from this region, and as the future generation growing up from this really cataclysmic moment?
So did their families have issues with having this, be documented?
No, that was actually quite nice. Sometimes the other relatives had problems. For example, the aunt or the uncle or the cousin or the other person who came to an event. But the parents, no. That's actually really interesting, because their parents continually surprised me in that they gave so much trust and love and encouragement to their daughters. And what was interesting is that all of these families only had daughters, and they either had 2 or 3 max. So it was these families just of girls and sisters, And I was just totally amazed because the families, they were all middle class, but they had all worked to get there. Like their grandparents were from a village, or their grandparents, perhaps some of them weren't, not all of them knew, were literate. So a lot of these parents really were the first generation to make it, and they just gave everything. And I mean, it wasn't that they didn't have fights. For example, it's dangerous, you shouldn't be going by yourself. But in the end, they did allow their girls to travel, to get educated, to do all these things that you wouldn't imagine parents being okay with. And they were absolutely okay also with the camera for the most part, 95% of the time, as far as I know.
Okay. Okay. So what were the challenges that they or you had, while that was being filmed?
Well, first challenge was logistical issues, legal issues, because in Morocco, you have to have permission from the government to film. And then that also requires that you have to hire someone from the government to be on your team, which is just a very nice way of, you always have someone monitoring you.
Okay.
And so it's not like I was doing something very clandestine. It's just that I didn't want someone with me. I mean, it was something really intimate. So I had to be the sound technician, the camera operator. I basically had to be a one-person team. Normally you have 3 or 4 people on set doing one of these things each. But I had to do all of this because it was intimate. There was no way another guy was going to be able to come into a bedroom of one of my protagonists and hang out there. No way. The conversations would not have been possible if I was a guy or with a guy, or no way. So for me, on a very practical level, it was not possible to ask some government official to be with me in people's bedrooms over 10 years. It's just not going to happen. So every single time I was filming, and thankfully my camera was very small, and it looked kind of just like it looked like it was for photos only.
Right.
I would have to pass it off as I was just taking pictures, and I'm a tourist and I don't know anything, and I just speak English. And so I had to do that a few times. I don't really feel bad about it because I don't feel like I did something criminal, but that was a challenge because officially I did break a little rule here, but maybe sometimes rules were meant to be broken. So that I did. So that was a challenge. And then also, just having to make sure I didn't forget the sound, and I wasn't recording over anything. And it was a lot. And so I also have to be the interviewer. So here I'm like trying to interview as I have the camera.
Right. Yeah.
It got better, but and you also, over 10 years, you form an attachment and real bonds with people. So I hope that was not a hindrance. I hope that was more of a help than not. But it's been a long ride, tons of issues, but so far so good.
So just out of curiosity, because as you know, like I do some film and editing, I kind of dabble in it. And film's changed over the past 10 years. So how are you able to like make, did you change the type of film that you use, in other words, or to like change with the times, or do you just kept it the same way so that it makes it easier for editing?
Well, actually, I kept the same camera, which was always a digital camera, HD camera, but it was never very fancy. Like I always wanted a really beautiful Canon, 5D, we would call it, 5D something model. But no, I kept my little small, little device, and it's worked perfectly well for me. And maybe one day I will upgrade it, probably for the next project. But so far so good. I mean, it's okay. But what I intend to do in editing is that I do intend to play around with some things. Like I do intend to try to add some animation, and to play around with photography in there as well. So it's not just talking heads. It's going to be a mix of things where I might have some final interviews where we're in a studio and you have a beautiful background, where you do, the end interviews. But a lot of it is just, it's decent quality, but it's also just kind of guerrilla style filming. So it's, you don't have these perfect shots. It's really kind of sometimes a little bit rough, but you do feel the emotion. So I haven't changed anything, but I intend to play around with a lot of different forms in editing.
Okay. So when you finalize your film, what do you plan to do with it to show the world? I know in the past you've done a lot of festivals and done really well with festivals. Will you continue that route, or will you try to sell it like online?
I haven't decided on any one thing yet. I definitely do want to have it seen at festivals, but I also have received interest from distributors. So that's something I'm keeping on the table. But then I'm not closing anything off. All I would like to do is have it seen by the largest audience possible. So that's why I do want to make sure that it is seen in festivals, because that's actually sometimes where you can find distribution and meet people who are interested in maybe making an arrangement to have it seen elsewhere. But I definitely, this time I really am aiming so that it is, after it's gone to festivals, that it does have a platform somewhere where whenever or anyone wants to see it, they can. So nothing is off the table, but I don't exactly just want to have it seen on just one television channel, because what happens after that, if it's bought by one channel, then it stays generally just with that one channel. They show it one time, and that's the end of it. So right. I do want to have some independence in who gets to, like, where I can choose to have it seen. But definitely, I definitely am going for festivals, because it's a lot of fun, and you get a lot of feedback, and you kind of also get to see how people react to it, because the best reaction I ever got was actually in Morocco at in the small village at this film festival, where people were jumping up and clapping and singing along. And it's too bad I didn't film it, because I was very much in it myself. But to have that kind of, I hope that we're able to do this, in the future, and not so much now, but to have that kind of interaction is so important for me to be able to see, and even to get questions, positive or negative. I don't mind, as long as I just kind of get that feedback.
Sure. So when you do finalize, do you want to show it in Morocco first?
Oh, actually, no. It's probably, I'm gonna probably not show it in Morocco at all. Just because sometimes the topic matter can be a little bit, whenever you have girls, everyone has opinion about what a good girl needs to be like. Even in the US, even in Europe, everyone has an opinion. And I would just prefer to not have that discussion with anyone about it in Morocco. So this time around, I have no plans, absolutely zero plans to show it there. And especially, if there are some topics that come up that are a bit taboo, I have no interest in having that debate over there. So I'm just, I'll show it wherever it needs to be seen, but I probably will try to avoid Morocco, because the girls are from there, and I don't want like the grand uncle of the cousin of someone else to come and bother them about it. I would prefer to have them have some peace.
Sure. So moving back to the girls, because of their, because they grew into their passions, they opened up to become what they wanted to become. They opened up to be who they wanted to be. Do their families have issues with that?
If they do, they don't say, because I think their relationship with their kids is one where they just feel like their kids are their own person. They have given them the education they think is important. They've shown them their values, and then now that they are kind of adults, they're giving them the freedom to do what they like, make their own mistakes, make their good choices, do well for themselves.
Sure.
The parents are not imposing who they think they need to be on their kids, which is kind of exceptional. And I would say anywhere in the world, because it doesn't matter what country you're in, parents generally do want their kids to do what they want them to do. I mean, it's just very human. So I would have to say the more I think about it, the more the parents are just they've really allowed their daughters to become the people they are today, because they've kind of given them everything they needed and then let them go.
Right.
So,
Well,
so yeah, so they don't have a problem with what they're doing. And some of the things sometimes they're doing are pretty scandalous. I mean, I'm saying all, but one in particular goes to topics that are really kind of like very like surprising, even for me. And her parents are like, oh, okay, well, okay. So yeah, no, they support their kids all the way.
yeah, wow. So how long, I mean, like, what made you pick Morocco?
Well, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I was thinking about this today randomly, because I ask myself that question all the time, and I know why. It's hard to explain. But how it officially started was in college, in university. I was in this government class, and I thought I was going to go into politics. I was really sure I was going to become a politician, and I had my goal. I'm the president of the United States, blah blah blah.
Aren't you glad you did it?
And then I went into government, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And that is not a diss to my professor. He was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. It's just, I realized then that wasn't the kind of politics I was interested in. I was interested in the politics of people and human beings and the dynamics of culture, not so much policy making and all the other stuff that comes with politics officially. So one great thing was that a professor from Rabat, so the capital city of Morocco, came to our school, and he basically, this was like maybe a few weeks or so after 9/11. So it was the world was a lot of things had happened. It was not the same world that I had come into college with. So it was
Right.
So it was a bit confusing. And this professor came in, spoke only for 5 minutes, but he spoke about his daughter. He spoke about his wife. He spoke about how he was experiencing things. And he spoke so clearly about concepts that my teacher was trying to explain to us for a very long time. And it was not getting anywhere with me. But this teacher spoke in terms that I could understand. He spoke about human dynamics, relationships between people, and I understood what he meant with radicalism, what he was explaining about how one generation can be extremely liberal, the next one can be extremely conservative, and there's no telling what will happen next when it comes to globalization and radicalism and all these other things. So in 5 minutes, I got it. And I said, oh, I have to go study with this guy. And I felt really pulled. I was the only one who went, and I signed up for his study abroad program. They said it's either 2 years of French or 1 year of Arabic. Took the 1 year of Arabic, went for my junior year abroad, and again, felt like I was in a strange place, but familiar. It was familiar. I saw my father's face everywhere. My name was everywhere. And the food, it was my father's food. Even the sounds, it sounded like my father. So in a very strange way, it felt like I was coming to my father's home. And then strangely enough, yes, I mean, I did connect the dots where, in fact, there are many connections between my father and Morocco and my heritage and Morocco, but I didn't know that at the time. But every single time I tried to leave Morocco, I was pulled back. So then I came on a Fulbright. And then I was supposed to leave, and I couldn't leave. I had to stay. I felt like even just like I was being pulled from the ground. You stay here. This is your home. We're not done with you yet. So I stayed. and I raised my daughter there. And I only left about 4.5 years ago. So I spent all of my 20s in Morocco. And it's one where I can't quite explain it, but there is something about Morocco, and there's something on another level that I can't quite put words on, where I feel like there's a very strong pull that goes back generations. And yeah, and so it's a love-hate relationship, because I love it, but it's not because it's an easy place to live or it's really friendly to women, or to there are some issues there, like anywhere. But it wasn't the most comfortable experience, but I did learn a lot.
Right.
And it did help me grow. And there was a lot of things that I had to be there for.
Right. And I'm sure at the same token, you find a lot of beauty in it as well, especially with every, with every single culture that there is around the world, there's always something great about it, and then you have relate to your family. Sure. So.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that was great about Morocco, I mean, a lot of people will say, when they come to visit, that everyone is very friendly. Yes, but that is true. But African culture is friendly. But there is something about Morocco that I have to say I have come to respect and love, and that's the women of Morocco. They actually, when I came, I was always saying, I'm sorry. And I was really always trying to be very polite, and really what I understood was the right way to be a woman. And I just met time after time women who were so direct, were not afraid to show their emotions, whether that be anger or assertiveness or vulnerability. My biggest teacher is about how to be a human being, and just to accept that there is no correct way to be a woman. That comes from Moroccan women. So salute, hats off to all the women, shout out to the women everywhere in Morocco, because they were exceptional, and they are exceptional.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time right now, so I wish we had more time, and definitely I would love to have you come back, especially after your film is done.
Absolutely.
And that way we can make more people aware of where they can find it, where they can find your film, The Secret Lives of Flowers. So, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And I love how you got the name for it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into Potluck. It was a pleasure to have you. If you're just tuning in now, you can catch past episodes at www.potluck-online.org, or go to YouTube and look for Potluck TV. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next time.